Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we're going to do something fun. We're actually going to create a bit of a different style video because I'm going to give you guys 10 different dinosaur model releases that I wish actually got released. So basically, these are different models that were teased along the way that never made it to the customer. It never made it into production, I guess, and if it did make it into production, it certainly never made it up for sale. And we've got, actually it's going to end up being more than 10 because there are kind of like different things in between, which you'll see as we go. Also, it's worth noting that not every figure in this video is a dinosaur. Even though the title of the video is dinosaur, some of them are other sort of prehistoric creatures. It just made it easier to just say dinosaur in the title rather than, you know, putting the entire thing as dinosaur and other prehistoric creatures or whatever. So, and in fact, the very first figure is in fact not a dinosaur, so you'll see as we go through. But the first one, number 10, would be the MesoZoo Prestosuchus. Now, this is a figure I personally was hyped for because we don't have very many Prestosuchus. Like, I have a hard time thinking of maybe more than 3. And I was really excited about MesoZoo in general. If you can recall, they released an Allosaurus, which was pretty darn nice, and I felt like they had a lot of potential moving forward. And they had teased this very cool Prestosuchus that you see here, which honestly is probably one of the nicest versions that could have been released. And I thought the release was pretty much right around the corner, or it seemed that way, and then MesoZoo just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. I've tried contacting them many times over the last few years, and I have gotten nowhere, no responses whatsoever, which is very sad because, like I said, they were creating some pretty cool stuff and had some massive, massive potential, especially with this Prestosuchus. Number 9 is actually also a MesoZoo figure, as it was their Spinosaurus. When they disappeared, they were actually putting up quite a few different images of the Spinosaurus, kind of trying to decide on a color scheme, and I think this is the one they were going with. And as you can see, it's probably one of the most gorgeous Spinosaurus models that I've ever seen, and probably that you've ever seen. And again, another figure that I really, really wish would have at some point made it into production and made it to our hands. It would have been the best figure to come from MesoZoo up until that point, although the Prestosuchus probably could have given it some pretty good competition, but unfortunately another figure that seems to be lost forever. There is also, for number 8, the W Dragon Velociraptor. Yes, it's weird to think that W Dragon had actually teased a model at some point and didn't release it, because they're usually pretty good. You know, their track record when it comes to teasing something and actually getting it out into the customer's hands are pretty darn good, and this is the only figure that I can recall them not actually getting released. But I think this one never really made it out because of many people criticizing it as far as the scientific accuracy department goes, claiming that it wasn't nearly as accurate as they were kind of promoting it as, and that may be the reason why it never made it into production. And that's, you know, just my guess. I think the last time we had heard anything about this was like 4 years ago, so I think at this point there's a pretty good chance we won't see it, but I kind of keep my fingers crossed that at some point it does get released because I thought it looked really cool. Number 7 is another Velociraptor, and in fact number 6 will be as well, but this one is the Chronicle Collectibles 1/6 scale articulated Velociraptor. Now, Chronicle Collectibles ended up being a pretty terrible company. You know, at one time they were very promising, and they actually had a really good thing going on, like with their social media accounts. They would do like live streams and everything every week and show stuff off to their fans and interact with us and everything. And then at some point, I guess they just got too far behind and they went bankrupt as far as I'm aware, and unfortunately I guess just gave up on the entire thing because after they went bankrupt, they pretty much stole the money of many people who had stuff pre-ordered and never returned it. Some people did get their money back, but there is a large amount of people that lost a large amount of money thanks to Chronicle Collectibles and the way they conducted their business when they were closing. But this is one of the figures that near the end they had teased, and honestly it would have been one of the absolute best Jurassic Park figures in existence. This thing looks so incredible. It looks super screen accurate. The paint apps on it are fantastic, and the articulation looks incredible as well. But again, unfortunately, it's another figure that ended up disappearing with the closure of Chronicle Collectibles. And just like with that articulated raptor, there was another really cool raptor they were planning to release. This would be my number 6, as the Chronicle Collectibles Breakout Raptor was epic and probably one of the coolest looking Jurassic Park Velociraptor statues I've ever seen. The entire idea of creating a model featuring the Velociraptors breaking out of their paddock was just so cool. It's not something we actually got to see in Jurassic Park, so to have a model kind of recreating that scene for us was really awesome, and the entire thing also was, again, just so well done. Chronicle was really good at coming up with some cool stuff for their releases. Not so great half the time when it comes to the paint apps on their final product, but this one, you know, the paint apps for the Raptors, kind of basic, so I feel like they would have done a decent job. And the Velociraptor bust, the full-size Velociraptor bust they had released, was really well done. So I had some strong hope that this one was going to be another incredible release that I was probably going to try to pick up, but unfortunately, this as well disappeared once they went bankrupt and stole a ton of people's money. The next thing, and this is what I was talking about when I said that there would be numerous figures actually, because this time we're going to go with Mesozoica as a whole, because this company never actually got up off the ground and running. They teased a ton of incredible vintage style figures, and there was so many cool ones I really wanted to get my hands on. Like, if you know me, you know I am a gigantic fan of vintage dinosaurs. I just love them so much. So the entire idea of Mesozoica was so appealing to me because it was a company based around vintage style dinosaurs, and we still don't really have that going on. So to see them going and creating such marvelous looking vintage style dinosaurs, even including Crystal Palace statues, like, I was, to say sold would be an understatement, but again, there was just a point where they were preparing for their first release and then they just stopped posting. I've tried contacting them, no response whatsoever. So unfortunately, it looks as though Mesozoica is long gone. I still keep my fingers crossed that both Mesozoica and MesoZoo will re-emerge at some point and start releasing these figures, but doesn't seem too likely right now. The next one is the ThinkArt Caprasaurus. This is a figure that I thought for sure would get released because ThinkArt had already released, I think, 3, maybe even 4 figures prior to this, all of which I have reviews for here on the channel, and they were incredible. I was a massive fan of the models they were producing, and I felt like this honestly was like their grand finale. It was the best figure that they had released or were going to release up until this point, and it was probably also one of the best Caprasaurus models that I've ever seen in my entire life, but I'm not really sure what happened here. ThinkArt still produces figures, but as far as the actual Caprasaurus goes, I don't think it ever ended up getting released and never saw the light of day, and I'm not entirely sure why, but it really would have been an amazing model to add to my collection. And then for the final 3, we are going to head to Rebor, and we could honestly probably have made this entire list just based off of Rebor and the figures that they've teased over the years and then never actually released, but I've tried to narrow it down to the ones that were my favorites. First of all, the Retrosaurs. Yes, the Retrosaurs did get released, 2 different versions of the Tyrannosaurus, but there were so many more that were being teased. We had the Invictus-style T-Rex, which honestly, man, I would love to have that because I am a major fan of the Invicta line as a whole, and when it comes to a vintage style Tyrannosaurus, like, it really doesn't get any better than that. But there were also others like the Ceratosaurus. Again, a vintage Ceratosaurus would be insanely cool to be able to have and add to our collections, especially if you are a fan, again, of vintage dinosaurs. Like, that's probably one of the coolest looking Ceratosaurus models that I've ever seen. And on top of that, there were also different repaints of the other Retrosaurs that were already released, and I always felt like they looked really good. Also, you know, I would definitely have purchased and added each and every one of those to my collection because honestly, I cannot get enough when it comes to old school vintage dinosaurs in my collection. So again, another round of figures that it seems as though Rebor is not going to proceed with, as it's been quite a few years now since we've heard anything about these figures. The next one is a figure that technically was released, but they were planning on re-releasing it with different paint schemes. As you can see, the Disney's dinosaur-style Carnotaurus was teased with 2 other paint schemes that never seemed to make it into production. We had a really nice-looking green version with brown patterning, and then the other one absolutely is my favorite overall because it is based on the Dinosaurius Sideshow coloration of the Carnotaurus, which I love that color scheme, and it looked so good on this version of the Carnotaurus. I can only keep my fingers crossed that maybe Rebor at some point will re-release a new Carnotaurus, because I feel like currently they could do a way better job on it than they did on their older Carnotaurus, even better than the Disney's dinosaur one. But if they release a new, more accurate style Carnotaurus, I absolutely am going to keep my fingers crossed that these would be the color schemes for it, because they looked amazing, and even still I would just in general love to see these figures get a release. And then number 1 would be, of course, the last one, but before we get to that, one honorable mention, because I didn't really have anywhere to put it on this list, but it is a figure that was so cool I really would have liked to have seen Rebor release it, was their dead Protoceratops, because it's just so cool. It has its like intestines hanging out, and when it comes to any type of a Velociraptor figure, man, it would have looked so cool to include with this. So just one honorable mention when it comes to that Protoceratops. It's not something that, in my opinion, is any more important than any of these other figures on this list. Like, I really would have put it past everyone else, but it's just so cool. I still would really have liked to have seen it get released. But number 1, again, when it comes to Rebor, would be their Spinosaurus. Yes, they were planning on releasing a grab-and-go style Spinosaurus, just like they did with their T-Rex, and again, it just kind of disappeared. It never ended up getting released. I don't know if maybe it's because Spinosaurus is continuously updating itself as far as what we find out about it, and it changes almost every other week. And as you can see, like, it's got that outdated tail and everything. It doesn't have the paddle-like tail or anything, but I still thought it looked so nice, and the color schemes were fantastic for it. One obviously based on the Papo Spino, another based on the JP3 Spino. Like, they looked really, really good, and definitely, again, was another figure I was looking forward to. And speaking of the JP3 Spino, they actually had a Jurassic Park 3 style Spinosaurus they were planning on releasing as well, which also did not make it into production. I guess because there were just so many JP3 Spinos out, they didn't bother with it. But honestly, a Rebor version I feel like would still sell really well, and I would have loved to have seen that one get released also. So when it comes to unreleased dinosaur figures, honestly, I feel like I've probably barely scratched the surface, but I tried to pick some of the ones that I really wanted to get my hands on the most. So let me know in the comment section what you guys think of, not only the models, but also this type of video, if you would like to see more like this, because I could definitely create more of these videos moving into the future. And of course, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.